Yo, what's up out there on the internet? This your boy Vaughn B. I was cruising through YouTube the other day and I saw that the Critical Drinker had something to say about Tomb Raider. As far as I'm concerned about Tomb Raider, is kind of like a girl boss type stuff. It tends to be on its way out, and Tomb Raider as a franchise has been kind of heading in that direction a lot lately, which is to a shame because it's actually a pretty cool franchise. So let's see what he had to say about it, and I'll throw my 2 cents in there as well. All right. All right, here we go.
You know, movie adaptations of popular video game franchises,
That actually wasn't half bad. And in hindsight, just like a lot of stuff nowadays, when you go back and you look at it, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was because you couldn't foresee how bad it could be.
are nothing new, but apart from Resident Evil, which is basically a case study in Hollywood insanity, the most frustrating of them all has got to be Tomb Raider. I mean, Lara Croft as a character was practically tailor-made for the big screen. She's a modern-day Indiana Jones with a touch of James Bond upper-class British sophistication and a fantastic pair of, eyes. She goes on
Which they have been slowly getting rid of over the last couple of games.
globe-trotting adventures to find lost tombs and recover ancient artifacts, dodging
can't do
traps,
that.
dangerous wildlife, and rival tomb raiders that are hot on her trail. It's not exactly rocket science, but for some reason, Hollywood just can't seem to nail it. In fact, the more times they try, the worse they seem to fail. They started out pretty strong at least. The Angelina Jolie movie from 2001 was a decent stab at adapting Lara Croft to the big screen, even if the plot was a bit all over the place. The action scenes were fun and suitably over the top. The tombs looked like actual tombs from the games. Jolie was about as close as any actress could get to Lara, and there was a genuine sense of fun and adventure to the whole thing. It's also kind of funny to see a pre-Bond Daniel Craig trying to make the most of a pretty thankless role. The movie took itself just seriously enough to get you invested without getting bogged down in the ethics of stealing historical artifacts from other cultures. Fuck it, if they really cared that much about them, they wouldn't have left them buried in the ground for 1,000 years. Anyway, I digress. Angelina Jolie clearly understood the assignment on this one. She got into surprisingly good shape for the role and was happy to play up to Lara's femme fatale side. I mean, middle-aged Angelina probably considers it a horribly dated piece of exploitation from a less enlightened time, but I'm pretty sure she was happy enough to take the paycheck back in the day. Funny.
You know what's funny is Scarlett Johansson is like in the same boat. They made who they were being hot, and then when they get to the point where they're kind of older, and they're not considered as hot as they used to be, now they have all kinds of issues with the means that they had to get to where they are. It's kind of funny because most dudes don't even get that. So
How that works, isn't it? The movie went down pretty well with fans and made enough money to greenlight a sequel, The Cradle of Life, which squandered all that goodwill on a meandering plot, a shitty and forgettable villain, and action scenes that felt like a distinct step down from the previous movie. Apparently, director Jan de Bont hated working on this film and felt like he was being pulled in different directions by too many different people. These old Tomb Raider movies seem to have a weird knack for casting actors just before they hit the big time though. In this case, a very young and fresh-faced looking Gerard Butler not long before he was cast in 300s. Just like Daniel Craig before him, you can tell he's doing his best to get noticed in a role where basically he's just a sidekick. Cradle of Life made over $100 million less than the first film, and although the studio were up for doing a third movie, Angelina Jolie decided to move on to bigger and better things and refused to come back. Can't say I blame her really. As if this wasn't bad enough, the games were also going through a lull in popularity, struggling to make the transition to the next generation of games consoles. Lara Croft just wasn't the cool, sexy icon that she'd been a few years earlier, and so interest in movies faded away. It would be
you know what's funny is it probably had the same thing that happened with a lot of stuff where it gets to be so popular, then there are so many clones comes out based on it, and the clones, some of the clones are very good, but they're good enough to become their own thing, and then the original thing gets kind of lost in the shuffle, as you say, and kind of reminds me of when was it Avatar came out, and the ship designs, people, because most people who are into that kind of thing tend to be younger, so they said, well, how come all these ships look like Halo? And it's like, well, Halo is based off of the original, his designs from like Aliens 2. And so it's kind of funny how that works.
Be another 15 years before they'd even try again. The games had been rebooted for a new generation, Lara Croft had been reimagined from a fearless adventurer motivated by challenge and personal gain to a much more fragile and vulnerable character, always on the back foot, struggling just to stay alive, always apologising for everything, and usually beat up and dirty and terrified. Oh yeah, and crying. Lots of fucking crying. Anyway, somehow...
Alright, well, this was kind of an origin story. So this was before she became the person she was. And eventually that character kind of came to the foreground, but that game was an origin story. So you got to at least give them that.
How it worked. The games were a big success, and so it wasn't long before Hollywood decided to take another crack at Lara Croft. The result was Tomb Raider 2018, a movie that's basically the personification of meh. Too cluttered, too serious, and too grounded to be much fun.
Right. Well, the case with this movie, they decided to combine the first two reboot games. So instead of just telling the story from the first game, which they kind of did, and then they threw elements of the second game into it, and that's why it was kind of bloated, because it was two different stories jammed into one thing. Yeah, it would have worked if they would have just picked one. If they would have either did the second game or they did the first game, then it will probably be a little bit more streamlined and a more entertaining movie.
The action was meh, the villains were meh, and worst of all, Alicia Vikander's performance as Lara was meh. And that really was the biggest problem with this film, its star. The games were smart enough to put Lara front and center because the designers knew that Lara was the thing gamers would resonate with most. And I don't just mean sweaty 13-year-old boys that had just discovered they really like boobs. I mean that just like James Bond and Indiana Jones before her, the character herself became bigger and more memorable than the adventures she got involved in. For all their faults, the previous movies understood this too, which was why they were called Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and cast an actress with actual charisma and screen presence to play the leads. To be fair to her, Vikander definitely got in great shape for the role, and she looks like she could actually do some of the stuff her character does, but there's just something missing from her performance. And no, I'm not just talking about the obvious.
You dirty fecker.
Instead of being this larger-than-life femme fatale adventurer who's beautiful and mysterious and deadly and not afraid to make use of her own sensuality from time to time, she's just a generic action hero in a tank top. There's nothing unique or compelling about her, nothing that really marks her out as Lara Croft. She could be anyone, really, and because of that, she kind of fades into the background.
Alright, so another point though, Hollywood at this point was is a lot different. So all the stuff that you would normally see in these types of movies during the 80s and the 90s and then maybe the early 2000s, you're not going to see, because this is the beginning of where Hollywood is now. This was the beginning of that. So you couldn't have her be like how she was, because it was archaic. It was, it was it wasn't sophisticated enough kind of thing. So that's kind of why this movie had the issues that it did.
Followed up and overwhelmed by all the action and scenery and other actors. I don't know, man. Nobody seemed to be having a great time with this one, and I think audiences at the time could feel it. The film got lukewarm reviews, the studio couldn't seem to decide on a way forward, and ultimately a planned sequel was abandoned when Amazon bought up the rights to the series. But don't worry, dear viewer, we'll get to that one in a moment. Before that, there was the Tomb Raider TV series on Netflix, which was apparently set in the same continuity as the rebooted video games, but I don't really give a fuck because it was so god-awful. Lara Croft now combines the worst aspects of the rebooted character, constantly moping around, obsessing over her daddy issues, and feeling guilty just for existing, with a character design that looks like it sprang from the fever dreams of Neil Druckmann. Why the fuck does she have arms and shoulders and a jawline bigger than most men? Why do modern artists hate the very idea of femininity? Oh yeah, and she's gay now. Because of course she is. Because the idea of platonic female relationships are to modern writers what democratic election results are to Mark Hamill. Needless to say, the show was a fucking disaster, soaked in identity politics.
Well, they do that with men too. So yeah, men can't have platonic relationships in these things either. So
and completely devoid of fun and adventure. But the worst was yet to come, because we were just about to enter into the Phoebe Waller-Bridge era. See, up until they fired her for gross incompetence, Amazon Studios were run by Jennifer Salke, a woman I could best describe as Amazon's answer to Kathleen Kennedy. Honestly, middle-aged liberal white women are to fun and entertainment what Chuck E. Cheese is to healthy eating. She wasn't great at running a studio and famously shit-canned a Conan the Barbarian series because it had too much toxic masculinity in it. But one thing old Jen loved most of all were girl bosses. And since Amazon now had the rights to Tomb Raider, she was keen to put even more of a feminist stamp on it, so she hired British writer Phoebe Waller-Bridge as part of a $20 million development contract to come up with a new Tomb Raider TV show.
I don't get what's her deal, because I never watched whatever thing that she was famous for. Never heard of it until they start sticking her in everything, and then they would talk about whatever the hell that damn show was, like it was the greatest thing. I've never heard of it. I don't know anybody who talks about it. Like, I don't even know what the shit looks like, so I don't get it. But is this kind of how Hollywood works? Is they choose somebody who represents whatever the hell they're believing at that moment and stick that person into everything, a la Pedro Pascal.
Show for Amazon Prime.
Really?
I don't know how she managed it, but Phoebe Waller-Bridge has somehow spent almost a decade coasting on the success of one good TV show, hasn't achieved anything of value since then, but somehow Hollywood still treats her like she's this literary messiah that's going to transform the entire industry. And even if she was actually capable of seeing projects through to completion, fuck only knows why you'd choose the writer of Fleabag, a comedy drama about dysfunctional relationships, to helm your big budget action adventure series. I mean, Phoebe claims to be a big fan of the games, but then again, Leslie Headland claimed to be a big fan of Star Wars, so make of that what you will.
And we see how that turned out.
Well, that's definitely shite.
I've seen the script polish that she inflicted on No Time to Die, and I can tell you right now, her creative sensibilities are as far removed from Tomb Raider as Bella Ramsey is from good acting. As if all that wasn't bad enough, they also had their chosen actress for Lara Croft.
I have a very bad
feeling about this.
Remember how I just got done talking about charisma and magnetism and personality being a huge part of Lara's appeal? Well, how about casting an actress who never once demonstrated any of those things? Honestly, after the absolute embarrassment of Dark Phoenix, I figured that Hollywood would stop trying to make Sophie Turner happen, because clearly she's not going to happen. But
you'd be surprised.
Apparently they're going to give it one more shot with Tomb Raider.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Honestly, an actress who can't act and never once showed any inclination towards action movies playing Lara Croft, written by a creator who's never done anything like this before.
She's even flatter-chested than the flat-chested version of the new flatter-chested version of Lara Croft. Because I saw a picture of her when she worked out or whatever. She exercised her boobs off. So she was like flat. About as far from the original Lara Croft as you can probably go. Like, if you're going to pick someone who has the frontal features that Lara Croft has, you probably go with that Sweeney chick.
And hasn't achieved anything meaningful in almost 10 years. What could possibly go wrong? Apparently quite a lot, because this show has fluctuated between cancelled and active for at least a year now. There's been no word of any real progress on it for even longer, and with Jennifer Salke ousted as head of Amazon Studios, it kinda makes you wonder if it's ever gonna see the light of day. I mean, personally, I hope it does, just for the sheer hilarity it's gonna bring. My point though is that Lara Croft is like some beautiful old Victorian house at this point, remodeled and redecorated as the fads and fashions of each new decade came and went. Every new generation adding more shit to some.
Alright, I miss that in movies. The dive sideways shooting thing where somehow the person that she or he or whoever is shooting at doesn't see they're slowly drifting across this and like to shoot their ass. I miss that. I miss the ridiculous like fight stuff from the early 2000s, late 90s. I missed it.
something that was never designed to accommodate it in the first place. The fact is, Hollywood can't get Lara Croft right because she's the product of a very different era that's fundamentally incompatible with how stories are written now.
Yeah.
And every time they try to adapt her for a modern audience, all they really do is expose how laughably shit their writing's become now. So good luck, Phoebe and the fine people at Amazon Studios. I'll be looking forward to seeing what you produce. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Alright, yeah, that was pretty funny. I kind of agree with him. So it's like I like it that the stuff that I like when I was younger is getting new life. What I don't like is that the people that they're giving this stuff to suck. And that's just the bottom line of as it is. So I don't want them to touch anything. I'm probably going to go see if I can find those movies and I can watch them again. That's what and seems like a lot of people are doing. Just going and just watching the old stuff. I heard about Lilo. They changed that. I'm just going to watch the old one. I don't need to watch the new one. So I don't know. But, it was entertaining. Who knows what will happen. But like, share, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. My name is Vaughn B. This is the Gaming and Culture channel. All right, I'm out. Later.